What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're excited because we have another special treat in store for you today. If you are subscribed here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, if you're not, wow, super offensive. But if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so. But if you are subscribed, you're likely aware that we've had some interviews I've been conducting with different coaches from the college ranks, individuals who worked with some of the newest members of the Dallas Cowboys, because I find this to be an incredibly informative process. It's obviously worth understanding who these players are that we're going to be rooting for on Sundays in the fall. And the best way to do that, one of the very best ways to do that, is to talk to the people who know them best, who worked with them, who helped them get to this point. Now, today we have an interview with Alabama Crimson Tide offensive line coach Chris Kapilovic for you that I recorded last week. It was over the phone, so it's going to be very similar to our Ron Roberts interview. However, I have to apologize because it's a unique recording style, just to be kind of honest with you, when these are phoners, and I forgot to hit record from a visual standpoint at the very beginning. So the first few minutes, I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen, the same graphic that you'll see next to me shortly after. Again, it's about 3 minutes before I remembered, hey, I should probably record the visual component of this. So just wanted to say that at the very beginning. Thank you to everyone for the support, the comments you've offered on the previous conversations we've been having throughout this, I don't want to call it a series, but little run of time. It's been a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's get to Chris Kapilovic, who worked with Dallas Cowboys first-round draft pick Tyler Booker.
I would say like 6 months ago, the iPhone came up with a way to record calls, which makes stuff like this a lot easier. So it's pretty
No
smooth.
doubt.
And just making sure, because I've practiced this several times. It's Kapilovic.
That's pretty good right there. Not many people get it right.
All right,
Yes, excellent.
well, pretty good. Sounds like there's room for improvement, but I
Nope,
guess
nope,
that's
nope. That's good. That's good.
awesome. Well, let's get going, Coach. We'll start in three, two, one. Very pleased to be joined here at Blogging the Boys by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair, the internationally famous. He is starring in the new Fantastic Four movie, if my sources are to be believed. It is Alabama offensive line coach Chris Kapilovic. Coach, is that true? Will you be in Fantastic Four?
That's pretty funny. I'm hoping. I'm waiting for a callback. Waiting for a callback.
Yeah, you know what? You and Robert Downey Jr., you know what I mean? Like, that's what it's ultimately down to. And I think you've got the inside track there.
Well, I hope so. I don't know. We'll see. I might have more of a face for radio, but we'll see.
Well, if you have a mind for anything, it is for molding young men, just otherworldly talented players. Obviously, in Tuscaloosa these days, I don't know exactly where you are right now. You're in your car. For our entire audience, Coach has been gracious enough to give us some time to talk about one of the newest members of the Dallas Cowboys, and Tyler Booker, who, Coach, you helped, obviously, among other people, to be clear, but turn things around from an offensive line standpoint last year for the Tide.
Well, it was, obviously I'm just one person in a just family of people that have supported and done things, obviously, to help Tyler in his journey. And yes, also being blessed to be the offensive line coach at the greatest college football program in the country at Alabama, no doubt.
It is interesting to look at what you all accomplished last year. And I don't know, I know how your athletic department works and how the game goes, and you guys have all these bios and things like that, that sort of describe, your path to Alabama or whoever's path. And are you aware of how it notes relative to your bio at Alabama that you turned around an offensive line from 2023? Like our interpretation of what is bad for Alabama is unreal relative to everybody else. You know what I'm saying? There's work to be done when things are perfect. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yes. There's always the standard and bar is very high here, which I love about it.
Well, and so in studying Tyler, obviously, not just as an athlete and as an offensive lineman, but as a person and his path from, growing up to IMG to you all and obviously now to the Cowboys, it seems that disposition is sort of his North Star, and what powers him is that good isn't good enough, that we have to be the 1%. He comes from IMG in Alabama. This is the 1% of every level of football that he's played in. In your experience, is that kind of how he approaches things on a day-by-day basis?
There's no question. He is one of the most driven human beings and players I've ever been associated with. And, his story goes back to middle school, in my conversations when I first got there and kind of seeing who he was and what he was about. Him and his family kind of made a decision that this was the path he wanted to be on. And it was going to a middle school that was an hour or two away from home. Parents had to sacrifice changing up jobs, siblings, sleeping in cars. Then he went to a high school that was an hour or two away from home, because all of these things were going to help him get where he wanted to go up until he made the decision to go to IMG. And he's lived his life to be on this journey and to make sure he was disciplined in everything he did. And it's really impressive. And his goal wasn't just to get a scholarship to Alabama or make it to the NFL. He had a goal very early on. He wanted to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. And I believe with all my heart he's going to make that goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you obviously know him better than us, but that encapsulates the spirit that he seems to present himself with. And I love, in his introductory press conference the day after he was drafted, he talked about how he viewed going to IMG, which obviously was the step before, you all, and you've gotten to work with him, et cetera, but how he viewed that as a job and how he viewed that as something serious. And I would imagine in your experience that isn't the case, that I don't want to speak ill of any, athlete you've worked with, but that maybe for some players it is just to get a scholarship, even to go to Alabama, just maybe get an education. Everybody has different goals and wants and wishes in life. But to Tyler, not to discredit what he's achieved and accomplished to date, but it does seem like, no, I haven't even begun the work to where I want to go ultimately.
Absolutely. Like I said, he's every time as a coach, every time somebody accomplishes something, which is okay, now I got a scholarship to play Division I football, or now I get drafted and I go to the NFL, different people will start to relax and settle as they reach certain goals. And for him, that's not even, I don't even know if that's in his DNA. He maybe someday he'll feel that way when it's all said and done, but it will not be what he's about now.
Yeah, that sounds like the Alabama way. Although, I mean, it sounds like that's why he was such a perfect marriage for the school, for the organization, just because that's how you all tend to operate. He noted in talking about kind of great memories. He's spoken with great revere for Jalen Milroe, and that makes sense, obviously. But he talked about the LSU game and how that was just so satisfying to just kind of quiet the crowd. He seems very kind-natured, but he does seem to have that gear that is, what you kind of want your football players to be. You kind of want a little bit of psychopath. You know what I'm saying? Like, he enjoys, taking the lights from somebody, if that makes sense.
100%. He's, if you had to draw up what you wanted a football player to be, he encapsulates exactly what it is. Unbelievable human being, easy to talk to, big old smile on his face. Would give his shirt off his back to you if you needed help. But man, when we get off the bus and walk in that locker room and he goes to the field to kind of walk around before the game, there's a switch and it changes right then. And it was interesting for me the first game with him, just kind of seeing what his routine was, because everybody's a little bit different and you could see it, and I loved it as a coach. And just the mindset, the determination. I mean, he would just talk to himself, like he would say who he is and what he's going to do before he did it, and then proceeded to do it. So it's definitely it's impressive, his preparation, and then how he carries out what he's got to get accomplished.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because he's mentioned that how he likes to visualize, I don't want to say the scripted plays, but kind of visualize, the first play action, things like that, just to kind of, but literally go through it, to your point, in his mind, kind of, this is who I'm blocking, this is where I'm moving, this is our set, this is our check, whatever. I don't think the word rehearsal is a strong enough word. I do think, like you're saying, he's almost manifesting what it's going to be like as far as his involvement in it.
Yeah, that's a huge, that's a great tool that you talk to all your guys about doing that. The visualization can be very powerful, and just you're taking these mental reps before you do them. And I do think those reps are important. And he obviously takes that to heart, but it's also more than just the plays. He's also seeing himself physically dominating people and how he's going to play every snap. Throw taking all that part out, he sees all that, but he also gets himself to a point where he's kind of worked up to where he just wants to dominate somebody every snap on top of the visualization of what we're going to do per script or play, no doubt.
That's awesome. I mean, that's kind of your, ideal, not just football player, but certainly offensive lineman. I know your time with Tyler has been brief, and I know you all had a lot of change and a lot of newness happening. In that understanding that, when was the first? Look, I recognize how silly this question is with regards to where you work, but when was the first moment that you knew this dude can play at the NFL level? And again, it's fine if that's the first time I saw him. Literally, he had that, but if there was a moment, if there was a play, if there was, a moment he squatted something, but the moment in your mind that you said, oh yeah, this dude, this is a first round guy.
Well, I think it was kind of twofold. So, my hiring was a little bit unique in the timing of it. And, I literally arrived at the building, suitcase in hand, and had to walk into a staff meeting and straight to a position meeting. And, there was no real preparation before that, but just seeing how dialed he was in the meeting, the caliber or level of questions he would ask, and then we had a walkthrough, and just his focus in the walkthrough, his attention to detail, his communication, I thought was very impressive at a high level, like what you would think a pro would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start getting into watching him lift and run and drill work. And you're like, all right, this guy's special. And then you get out there and you start practicing. And, it didn't take very long, a few practices, just how he did his drill work, how he competed in one-on-ones, and what he did, even against our defense, which we're going against really good players, obviously. Yes, it didn't take long for me to know that he was special, and I wanted to do everything I could to help him along with this journey.
Well, you did a tremendous job. Congratulations in that respect. Coach, one of my favorite parts about doing stuff like this, because again, in this case, Tyler better than anybody. And with Tyler, this is a weird question because he's a first round pick, and it feels like everything that's being said about him is so positive. And so generally, your fifth round guys, your day three guys, I like to ask, like, what are we missing? What is the misdiagnosis that the experts are saying is or isn't true that is simply false? And so right now, everybody is like, Tyler is awesome. And I don't mean to take away from that, but, based on, you're obviously very busy, you're working towards next season, but something you've seen people saying about him that you're like, oh yeah, no, y'all have definitely nailed it. Or no, you totally have this wrong about him. He's actually going to be this. I don't know if that question makes sense.
It does. I think that what you saw a little bit from the combine testing, there was questions of athleticism there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we had our pro day, those numbers improved, which was great to see. And it's funny, being a college coach, you got to have to be on social media, kind of keep up what's going on
Right.
with the guys and stuff. And so Lord knows you see all kinds of stuff on there. And I saw somebody had posted something about with his testing numbers, he's a potential bust. And I laughed at that, and it just co-signed my thoughts on people that post things on social media at times. What people don't understand is his numbers on some of those tests weren't through the roof, but the way he plays is through the roof. And, there's a lot of guys that are All-Americans, all pros in underwear, and it doesn't mean anything when you cross that white line, you got pads on, and you're going against somebody across from you. And just, again, his work ethic, his will and determination, it definitely supersedes those numbers that weren't through the charts for some people's minds. So I have no doubts in that. I know when we first got there, there's things you're really trying to pick at, things you can get better at. And whenever you challenge them with those things, it would come through. We talked about simple things like just his pulling. We
Right.
we were going to do some things. We're going to have to pull out in space, counters, pin pulls, things of that nature. And I challenged him. He needed to get better at that. And man, he takes every challenge to heart. I can tell you that. And he really did improve. And all you got to do is put the tape on and see him running around out there and getting on DBs. I mean, he's more than capable athletically to do whatever somebody would want him to do.
That's a great answer. And I think this gets said about quarterbacks a lot, but, like somebody's more of a gamer than a practice player or whatever. And that just, it sounds like, yeah, you can, there's value in athleticism and testing and scoring, but there is still a difference when you put pads and a helmet on and you go out there and you've got to, just kind of beat somebody one-on-one. My last one for you, you mentioned being on social media, and I know you're very busy, but I don't know if you saw what he told his new teammate Micah Parsons. Did you see this about like destroying someone's will to live? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. I do know what you're talking
Okay.
about. I thought it was awesome. First of all, like I'm telling every one of my guys I'm recruiting, make sure you look at that.
Right.
And it's awesome as a coach because you talk to your guys about wanting to do those things, but then when it's a guy that's actually doing it, is doing it and talking about it, it's impressive. And it takes a certain amount of what to be able to put that out there.
Sure.
And it just kind of talks about his confidence about he's not talking smack or overhyping himself. That's just who he is. That's what he does.
Yeah, I mean, just to amplify your point, I mean, he's not saying it in a braggadocious way. He's simply saying, "This is what I plan to do. This is who I am." And he's not, to your point, it takes some onions to hang it out there in general, but also to literally say it to his new teammate, who is Micah Parsons. I mean, like it is soaking wet in bravado. You know what I'm saying? And so, but it seems like that's who he is. Do you have any funny stories or characteristics about him that only you would know for us to kind of, maybe he's a rom-com guy or something that doesn't show up on the scouting report that we can kind of look forward to?
uh, Man, that you put me on a spot there. It's kind of because his personality really shows through when he does his interviews and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Like there's a little bit of an old soul to him. He is just the personality. It's always funny to me. I always talk about, this isn't really funny, but just how good he is at like being interviewed
Right.
and being able to like talk to any kind of group of people, socioeconomic diversity, whatever you want to say. He can blend in any arena, which I thought was very impressive. And one thing that people don't talk about is how much he gives back. He's a guy that, I mean, whether it's going to hospitals, food banks, detention centers, going to schools, like he doesn't make a big deal out of it. He doesn't post it, but man, he really believes in giving back and being an impact in people's lives. And I really love that about him as well. He's a pretty, if you get around him much, man, you'll love it. He's got a great sense of humor, and I don't probably have any. I wish I had something funny. I told the story about we worked about his pulling, and I'll say this to anybody that's around him. And the first counter play we ran in fall camp, he pulled, and it was almost perfection. We broke a long run. So I'm running downfield to celebrate with him, right? And that was a big mistake because he turned and he put two hands. I'm open for a high five. He put two hands through my chest and sternum. I literally thought he broke my sternum. I thought I was done. Like I as a tough guy, you can't show it, but I'm going back thinking, my God, am I going to have to go to the hospital? And so, I survived that obviously, but I've learned with him is being smart and picking my spots on how I celebrate with him. So that's the funny story I can give you on that.
That's a good one. I know you said it, you were on the spot, but you delivered wonderfully, Coach. You can also provide a firsthand account of what defensive tackles, have to go through on a play-by-play basis. So that's awesome, Coach. As we get you out of here, look, Alabama doesn't need any more attention, but players that you're working with for us to keep our eyes on, dudes you want to brag about. Obviously, we still got a ways to go until the fall gets here finally, but would love to just kind of give you a chance to put a spotlight on some players for us to watch this coming season.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's interesting. This is going to be a big year for us. We got potentially 5 guys that could leave to go to the NFL this year up front. Obviously our left tackle is a massive human being with unbelievable feet in Caden Proctor. And so if he has the kind of year that I expect, he's going to be another one we're going to be talking about. And then Parker Brailsford is another one. So those 2 guys could technically come back, but I think that they're in a situation where they're going to end up coming out. Parker Brailsford is very unique. He's our center. I say he's the best center in the country. And some people, they talk about his size. This kid started 2 years ago in the national championship game at 270 pounds, which is unbelievable. And he's not 270 now. He's in the 290s, and he's going to be really special. And so you're going to hear a lot of talk about him as the season gets going. And then, I'd be remiss if I got Jaden Roberts, Cam Dewberry, and Gino Vandermark. All three of those guys are seniors, and those guys are competing their tails off. And I would not be surprised for all five of those in some form or fashion are going to be in NFL camps.
Well, we will definitely keep our eyes on them, Coach. We'll keep an eyes on you all. Obviously, wishing you guys health, wealth, and happiness and success this coming year. Thank you so much for the time and the insight. Happy to hear that you are alive and well after the physical confrontation with Tyler. But thank you for the time, and be safe on the road.
I appreciate it, man. You take care.